Hi everyone! Today we will be talking about the differences between ENTJs and ESTJs. So I basically will be continuing the series that I started a while ago with respect to comparing different MBTI types. I've covered quite a lot of ground on this topic so far, so some of the videos that I've created are INFJ versus INTJ, INTP versus ISTP, ESFJ versus ENFJ, INTP versus INFJ, and many more. So feel free to check out the playlist. You will find out more information there as well. Today, on the other hand, we will be talking specifically about ESTJ and ENTJ by looking at the difference between intuition and sensing, the difference between NI and SI, SE and NE, as well as the difference in temperament between these two types. So all about that in the next few minutes. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's dive in. So, ENTJs and ESTJs. These are two types that can often easily be confused for each other because obviously they have a lot in common. 3 of the 4 letters are the same, their dominant function or their hero function is the same, their interaction style and communication style are very similar to each other. They both belong to the same interaction style in Linda Burns's interaction style model. So this means that it makes a lot of sense we would easily confuse these types for each other. So let's see what the main differences are. Firstly, we have the very simple surface level differentiation between intuition and sensing. This means that when it comes to perceiving information, ENTJs and ESTJs have a different approach. ENTJs have intuition as a function that they prefer over sensing, meaning they are more likely to enjoy dealing with abstract information. They are more likely to prioritize abstract input when it comes to their perception of reality. On the other hand, ESTJs with a preference for sensing are more likely to focus on the sensory input, on the more concrete dimension of informational perception. So when they interpret the world around them, they are more likely to draw more information or to simply feel more comfortable analyzing the concrete reality. But this is a very simple differentiation between intuition and sensing. And of course, we need to go a little bit deeper into seeing the cognitive functions. So let's start with that. ENTJs have introverted intuition, or NI, as their parent function, also known as the secondary or the auxiliary function. So this means that ENTJs are more likely to be long-term visionaries or long-term thinkers. A lot of the times when they try to, come up with plans and prepare for the future, they tend to think very long term. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, what would make sense? And they are more likely to project themselves into a more abstract and longer term future. They are also more likely to take risks because of this, even in situations where they do not have a lot of concrete input in terms of, if I take this action, what is actually going to be my return of investment? Because this is a key difference here, and I think this is important to talk about because we find a lot of ENTJs and ESTJs in corporations, as business leaders, as CEO, as managers. And a lot of them are interested in making these important decisions for the entire business. And they can have a lot of similarities in their approach because of their preference for extroverted thinking as a hero function. However, when it comes to the underlying processes, ENTJs are more comfortable with taking this longer term risk because they follow their intuition more so in that sense and are not so concerned with, if I make this decision, is this going to bring immediate, concrete, measurable results? They still care about the measurable results. They still care about making decisions that make logical sense, but again, less likely to be obsessed with very concrete, specific results in the moment. ESTJs, on the other hand, having a preference for introverted sensing, and for sensing overall as a parent function or secondary function, they are less likely to trust this longer term future And for them to make a specific decision, they need a little bit more concrete information as to how that particular decision is going to be working for them and for others. What the very specific, concrete, measurable results will be if they decide to follow through with that particular action. So they are a bit more practical or pragmatic in that sense, and less likely to enjoy taking their intuition into a very long-term kind of thinking. And this is not to say that ESTJs don't care about the future, because I think this is a common misconception in the community that types that have introverted sensing, so SJ types, are usually not interested in thinking about the future because they think about the past. That's not necessarily the case, because SJs can be incredible planners, especially ESTJs. They love plans, they love structures, they love preparing for the future, but they do it in a much more concrete, pragmatic way. And they do it by taking into account a more specific step-by-step approach that takes them to a specific future, rather than a more abstract, vague, and long-term approach that NI types have, similarly to the ENTJ. And again, I want to highlight this one more time. ENTJs are still extroverted thinking types as a dominant function. So it's not that they don't want to see concrete plans and measurable results. They care about that as well. But they also trust the intuition and the abstract component a little bit more than the ESTJs do. Also, this is more of a personal observation, but I've noticed that ENTJs, because of their combination between NI and SC, they are more likely to try to charm other people. That probably also comes from the extroverted sensing, which is their child function. They are more likely to want to create this positive impression on other people, and they sometimes make jokes or say things that are not that straightforward to try to see how the other person reacts. Even they are a bit more likely than ESTJs to be sarcastic. On the other hand, ESTJs tend to be even more straightforward and direct. Both of these types are direct, but ESTJs, because they have introverted sensing as their parent function, because of their temperament as well, they tend to be much more forward with what they say. I would say that maybe out of all of the types, probably together with ISTJs, ESTJs are the most likely to say what they mean and mean what they say. They can be extremely direct, extremely to the point, extremely concise, and less likely to try this charming approach or sarcastic approach. Again, doesn't mean that they will never be sarcastic, or they will never make jokes, or they will never try to be charming. But overall, this is a pattern that I've noticed. It's almost as if the ESTJ is a more stable structure and a more consistent structure, whereas the ENTJ can also float around a little bit more. Now, in terms of the temperament, ENTJs belong to the NT temperament from David Kersey's model, the rationals or the intellectuals, whereas ESTJs belong to the SJ temperament or group, which is also known as the guardians. And here we have a pretty important difference, or actually two. One of them is, again, the communication style, where ENTJs, being intuitives, are more likely to communicate in a more abstract fashion, whereas ESTJs, being sensors and being guardians, are more likely to communicate in a more concrete fashion. Then another difference is that NT types, like the ENTJs, are more likely to have a utilitarian approach to things. I've mentioned this in some of my previous videos. They like thinking whether, a particular decision or a particular choice makes sense in the world, whether it's practical, whether they can use it, or whether it makes sense in the context. But they don't prioritize collaboration with other people as much. On the other hand, SJs, including the ESTJ, are a little bit more likely to be open to a collaborative approach. They like cooperating with others, creating structures with others, because they are the guardians. They are the types that are very good at keeping structures in the society, keeping things stable, making sure that people work together to accomplish goals. So again, it's not that the ESTJ won't want to have a utilitarian practical approach, but they will prioritize creating and fostering collaboration and cooperation a little bit more than the ENTJs. And I think this is quite notable in a lot of companies. I've noticed this myself, and it also makes a lot of sense. ENTJs can often detach from everything that is happening in the company, and perhaps, being the CEO or being the owner, they are more likely to look at the whole structure from a very holistic point of view and then make decisions that they think are very business savvy. ESTJs can thrive a little bit more in contexts where they manage a specific department or a specific project or a specific team, and they can get a little bit more engrossed into making the team work together, thinking about very concrete actions that one can take, rather than very holistic company level actions. Okay, so these are my thoughts on the main and most notable differences between ENTJs and ESTJs. Thank you very much for being with me. Thank you very much for watching my videos. Again, if you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time with another video on typology.